In Psychological Types, Jung presented the functions in a specific way that presents a great deal of insight into understanding Myers-Briggs. He presented them as four categories, namely extraverted rationality, extroverted thinking versus extroverted feeling, extraverted irrationality, extroverted sensation versus extroverted intuition, introverted rationality, introverted thinking versus introverted feeling, and introverted irrationality, introverted sensation versus introverted intuition. An understanding of these four categories has been essential to my understanding of Myers-Briggs types, so I'll present them in order here. Building off of the previous definitions, I define extraverted rationality as an aggression focused on objects. More specifically, it seeks to conform objects to a certain standard, although the actual aggression is only towards thoughts and actions. Because the primary interest of those thoughts is in outside objects, those also become the primary interest of the aggression. Thus, its nature often manifests as the active organization or arrangement of its environment into harmony with certain standards. With this comes a sense of drive to accomplish things in the outside world. This drive is often satisfied through accomplishing specific goals. I have found that when people demonstrate extroverted rationality, they need a specific defined goal that they can work towards. Without a point B to their point A, they are lost on the plane, but when they have a point B, they are like a freight train. In extroverted thinking, the standard is logical and based in the efficiency of a system to accomplish its ends. Thus, extroverted thinking has a sense of domination and expediency because of its tendency to disregard standards of goodness in favor of standards of efficiency and production. With extroverted feeling, however, the standard is sentimental and based in the harmony of the parts of a system. This is often, and not erroneously, seen as interacting with people in such a way as to engender good feelings and harmony amongst each other, or at least arranging objects in such a way to be in harmony with each other. However, extroverted feeling can be just as aggressive as extroverted thinking in the name of the greater good or better payout of harmony later. I define extroverted irrationality as a reception of objects, or in other words, the passive observation of the aspects of objects. This manifests as a vivid awareness of the environment, and not just the immediate environment, but the whole entire environment that it has come in contact with. It is a sharp awareness of the general state of affairs. This is accompanied by some degree of thirst for new experiences to observe and experience, because it is the perception or experience of data that drives extroverted irrationality. Of extroverted sensation, Jung stated, "No other human type can equal the extroverted sensation type in realism." In this way, extroverted sensation has an acute awareness of reality and what is really going on in the world. Jung also elaborated that when he senses, everything essential has been said and done. Nothing can be more than concrete and actual. Conjectures that transcend or go beyond the concrete are only permitted on condition that they enhance sensation. In this way, extroverted sensation is unmatched in realism because of its distaste for the needlessly abstract. If an abstract idea does not enhance understanding or perception of the concrete world, then it is of no use or interest to extroverted sensation, but not because extroverted sensation is incapable of understanding it. Of the extroverted intuitive type, Jung stated, "The intuitive is always present where possibilities exist. He has a keen nose for things in the bud, pregnant with future promise. He can never exist in stable, long-established conditions of generally acknowledged though limited value, because his eye is constantly ranging for new possibilities. Stable conditions have an air of impending suffocation." Thus, extroverted intuition is keenly aware of all the possibilities surrounding them, all those abstract ideas not quite in reality, giving it clever or witty, though not necessarily realistic, insights into the environment. Also, because of the more transitory nature of their interests, namely unreal possibilities, Jung claims their thirst and wanderlust is much more pronounced than that in extroverted sensation. Continuing the definitions, I define introverted rationality as aggression towards the subject, or object's impressions on the subject. In other words, introverted rationality judges and conforms the subject's mental contents according to established standards, organizing the inner world into a principled system, and then judging objects depending on how their mental impressions interact with and measure up to these principles. In Lesson 2, I compared the introverted mind to a wet clay sculpture. Introverted rationality aggressively sculpts the impressions made on their mind to shape it and build it up. Introverted rationality is based in defined personal principles and building principles upon each other in a very architectural manner. Introverted rationality develops these personal principles often in spite of outside contradictions, giving them the quality of genuine and sincere adherence to pure principles over the opinions of the crowd, whether for good or ill. Introverted thinking develops and is governed by logical principles. It is interested in the development of logical systems and is often very mathematical and theoretical. Introverted feeling develops and is governed by sentimental principles. It is interested in organizing a system in which those things they delight in are extolled and those things disgusting to them are exiled, and this often develops into deep, sensitive, imaginative worlds where those concepts are obeyed to their ad absurdum. Finally, introverted irrationality may be described as a reception of the subject, or of objects' impressions on the subject's mental contents. In other words, introverted irrationality observes how objects affect and constellate in relation to the subject's inner mental contents. Consider the clay sculpture analogy I related earlier for introverted rationality, except introverted irrationality makes no attempt of its own to shape the sculpture, but only allows the object's impressions to shape it, and observes the figure that emerges. Thus, as introverted irrationality continues to experience the effects of certain objects, it begins to experience inner visions associated with certain objects as the figure becomes more pronounced. These visions, while hopefully insightful into the nature of these objects, are still subjective. However, introverted irrationality is often certain that they are objective, leading many introverted irrationals to consider themselves empiricists on the ground that their theories and understanding of the world is based entirely on experience, not realizing those experiences are subjective visions. Introverted sensation is focused on reality's effect on the subject, and develops a library of all their memories and real interactions, although all these recorded interactions are now subjective. The resulting wisdom often takes the form of personal traditions or habits because of its trust in how reality has interacted with it before, or symbolic memories, meaning the encapsulation of how subjective reality has worked before and which demands a strong reaction when the symbol's meaning is fulfilled in the outside world, in a good way or an ill way. The visions that pass before introverted sensation are like subjective flashbacks related to these symbolic ideas, and may even involve remembered physical sensations, but often demand some form of action related to them. Introverted intuition, however, is focused on how abstract ideas not quite in reality affect the subject, and develops wraith-like visions of how many ideas from various sources relate to each other and form one whole, because each abstract idea touched the same subject. These visions are notoriously dogmatic because of their urgency. They come with a sense of responsibility to carry out the vision, even though they are far removed from the realistic world. As Jung described it, he, the introverted intuitive, concerns himself with the meaning of his vision. He troubles about the possible moral effects which emerge from its intrinsic significance. His judgment allows him to discern, though often only darkly, that it is something which cannot just be perceived, but which also would fain become the life of the subject. Through this realization he feels bound to transform his vision into his own life. But since he tends to rely exclusively upon his vision, his moral effort becomes one-sided. He makes himself and his life symbolic, adapted, it is true, to the inner and eternal meaning of events, but unadapted to the actual present-day reality. So that was a lot, but in review, extraverted rationality is aggressive towards objects, seeking to organize the environment to meet certain standards. Extraverted irrationality is receptive towards objects, seeking awareness of the environment. Introverted rationality is aggressive towards the subject, seeking to organize the mind with set principles. Introverted irrationality is receptive towards the subject, seeking to understand the visions they see in relation to objects. Got all that? Okay, now let's take a more detailed look at the 8 directional functions.